Why I hate the death penalty. That is the subject of today's video. That was totally unintentional, but I'm going to show you that on purpose. Why I hate the death penalty. Nah, that didn't work as well. I'm going to try this again. Why I hate the death penalty. That is the subject of today's video. No, I'm not going to grab the feather. Just be this pathetic, sad Luigi that's been like, had this shit beaten out of him. Alright. Why I hate the death penalty. Great. Why I hate the death penalty. That is the subject of today's video. So I'm going to be blunt. I think if you committed murder, that you deserve to be locked up behind bars in prison for the rest of your life. But I do not support the idea of throwing a prisoner at the hands of the government to be killed. I do not trust the people in power enough to make good decisions when it comes to whether or not to kill somebody, because the federal government has a long history of killing people who did not deserve to die. There are a lot of cases with a death penalty where people died who didn't deserve it. That might have been the take, but I'm... Why I hate the death penalty. That is the subject of today's video. So, I'm going to be blunt. That was horrible. Alright. Why I hate the death penalty. That is the subject of today's video. So, a lot of people do bad things. Some people do bad things like murder, which is bad. There's no part of me that'll defend the actions of murderers. However, just because somebody is murdered doesn't mean the government should then kill that person. I think a life sentence in prison where they are behind bars for the rest of their life is a good enough punishment for murder. So while I do not defend the actions of people who murder people, I will not, under any circumstance, support the death penalty at all. Especially because there are a lot of people who have been killed by the death penalty that did not deserve to die. Wow, I just did a really good take and I didn't record it. That is a massive fuck up. Damn it, that was my best take. Why I hate the death penalty. That is the subject of today's video. I had a really good take and I didn't record it. I'm so upset. I'm so disoriented by that. My emotions need to shut the fuck up. Anyways. Why I hate the death penalty. That is the subject of today's video. So a lot of people support revenge. A lot of people truly believe in the concept of revenge, justice, and stuff like that. And the problem when you have a revenge mindset where you think, okay, this person did something bad, so now they deserve to die. The problem with that mindset is that if you trust certain people in positions of power to carry out those actions, they might kill people who never deserve to die because it serves their self-interest. One thing you have to understand about politicians is killing people they do not like serves their self-interest. I can't believe I had a really good take and didn't record. Why I hate the death penalty. That is the subject of today's video. So there is no part of me that supports the death penalty, largely because of the fact the government has a long history of killing innocent people with the death penalty. That is the number one reason why I will never support the death penalty under any circumstance. However, I do think people who commit murder, who kill people, do murder, those people do deserve to spend the rest of their life in prison. I think that is a good enough punishment for committing a horrible act of violence. I think people need to have way less trust in authority before they decide, hey, you know what? Let's have the government decide who gets to die. No, screw that. That's a terrible idea. Why I hate the death penalty. That is the subject of today's video. So I'm going to be blunt. There is no part of me that supports the death penalty, largely because the government has killed a lot of innocent people through the death penalty. But even if they didn't do that, even if the government had a perfect track record when it came to killing people with the death penalty, I still wouldn't support the death penalty, largely because I do not want the United States government to be in the business of killing people. I do not like how the military kills a lot of people who do not deserve to die. I do not like that our justice system has killed a lot of people that do not deserve to die. If people do bad things, put them in prison for the rest of their life, instead of killing them. I think killing somebody should only be done out of self-defense. Nothing else. Why I hate the death penalty. That is the subject of today's video. So I'm going to be blunt. There is no part of me that supports the death penalty, primarily because of the fact the government has a long history of killing innocent people through the death penalty. There are a lot of people who died because of the death penalty that were innocent. And that's fucked up. Like, that is really fucked up when you think about it. I want you to just take a moment of your time to think about, imagine being killed by the United States government because our justice system failed them. That will continue to happen for the rest of our lives. There will never be another day in my life where I can confidently say the government's going to do the right thing. The government will always disappoint you. Why I hate the death penalty. 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 That is the subject of today's video. So there is no part of me that supports the death penalty because a ton of innocent people have been killed by the death penalty. The government has a terrible track record when it comes to making good choices. They screw up all the time. So when it comes to whether or not somebody lives or die, there's no part of me that wants to put the government in that position of power. I want the government to have as little power over society as possible. However, I understand under extreme circumstances, if somebody commits murder, yeah, they probably deserve to be thrown in prison the rest of their life. That to me is an acceptable punishment. But I do not support the death penalty. Ever. I will never support the death penalty. Why I hate... Oh my god, I screwed that up. Why I hate the death penalty. That is the subject of today's video. So there is no part of me that supports the death penalty. And then I die. Why I hate... Oh my god, that's right. Bad take. Why I hate the death penalty. That is the subject of today's video. So there is no part of me that supports the death penalty, primarily because of the fact the government has a long history of killing innocent people through the death penalty. There are a lot of people who did not commit the crime that they were killed for. I want you to imagine that happening to you, where the government screws up, which the government does a lot. The government does a lot of things wrong. I have no confidence in the people in power. If there's one thing you should understand about my politics, is I do not trust people in positions of power. That's one of the reasons why I went from being a liberal to a libertarian, is because I do not trust people in positions of power. So the last thing I want to do as a libertarian who used to be a liberal is trust the government who gets to live and die.